Okay, so those are my do's. What are your do's?
Well, it's funny because
I don't know if
actually
y'all
all
can make that
animated,
into a
which
dirty
is really
joke.
funny. I was like, huh. And I mean, you can redo them as animated or as live action. Either way, I think I'm good with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like I said, the one caveat from the Disney animated range, they should stop. I said, except for the one. The one is the Black Cauldron,
Okay.
and that is from 1985, and it is based off of some sort of fantasy series book. And I just the reason think I would work really well as a either as a live action if you did it that way, like Disney wants me to do live actions. Is it because it was kind of made in that weird late 70s, early 80s period of when Disney didn't really know what to do with itself, and they made the movie like there you go. But they had a movie out there, the Black Hole, which was okay. It's like a Star Wars sort of ish type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But this movie was great because, I mean, you kind of had all the elements of modern stuff today back then. I mean, you had the strong female hero leader type. You had sort of the older, bard character who was inept and stuff, and you had the young kid who just was clueless. He didn't know what was going on. So the girl actually helped him get out of the dungeon that he was trapped in with this, because he's trying to protect this magical pig, but get caught up in this weird thing of the Horned King that's trying to resurrect an army of the dead. And I mean, you get the whole issue of, like Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and all these kind of fantasy movies and shows that are out there. Yes, there we go. that whole crazy awesomeness of sort of the rotoscoped green smoke that's sort of slowly, going at the feet over the kind of the edge of the castles as he's walking army of the undead. It's going to basically take over this entire world because no one's going to stop them because it's an infinite army, The Horned King was freaky scary as what. So that would be simple enough. And I mean, I think because it was one of those Disney shows that wasn't given a lot of love. It lost money. They put it in the vault for a long time, and they finally released it. Of course, it's actually on Disney Plus. So, but it took a while for it to come out on video because they always would put out their Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast, and those other ones, and they finally put out this one and a few others. It's just they could do it much better. They can make it a little longer. They could even make it a series of movies, kind of probably, because I think it's a series of books.
Okay.
And they can maybe get more in depth a little bit, I suppose, which, would be great. I think that would be a great thing to do. And it's an interesting story. It's new. It's fresh. It's different. It's not really been told. I mean, yeah, it's a story of, in a fantastical realm sense, but it's not done a million times over. I mean, you're talking an assistant pig keeper is trying to help, protect the world. I mean, this sounds kind of funny in a way. It's like, no, he's not a hero. He's not, well, I got to put my armor on and I got to go, bring honor to my family and move on, right? So it's just like, well, I'm assistant pig keeper. I got to take care of this pig and make sure this pig, for some reason, doesn't fall into, the enemy's hands, whoever they might be, and why would they might want a pig, I have no idea. So he's kind of, it's like, okay, I'll just do this then, I guess. And, but then he kind of, gets, fish out of water story pulled out and then has to figure out again, hey, the everyman, I'm in this situation. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what to do now. What do I do? And then all of a sudden along comes this girl who's trying to save herself because she's like, well, I can't expect the prince to come and save me. It's an aside to the camera sort of thing, like a nice little wink there. And so, she's competent and knows what to do and knows like, hey, we need to get out of here because this is bad news. It's just, I think it's overall it's a great story. It's just kind of like one that just wasn't, it was kind of glossed over a little bit. And then Disney really never get much love, but he tried. I give him that. But I think it'd be really redone really well with live action CG kind of stuff. Again, practical effects with the pig, I think would be best.
Right.
You might not could get practical effects with skeletons, although you could a little bit. I think mix it in, like you were saying before, with some of the other characters we talked about.
Yeah.
Just so that way it looks more real.
Yes.
But then, because if you look back at the old animated version, I think they rotoscoped a lot of the smoke and the weird double images and stuff, and it looked gorgeous and also like strange, because as you can see, like, you know, how the different layers of animation make the skeletons look. I mean, like, you can see the guy's backbone sticking out of his clothes and his arm. I mean, that's just gross and disgusting. That's awesome. And, you know, just watching them all shamble, you know, as they're walking to go and just basically, you know, destroy everything living.
Right.
And the Horned King is like, finally, I'm going to be, you know, control of the world. So, yeah, that's a definitely dark and foreboding movie that could get a lot of love and have these, you know, characters come and save the day. That'd be really cool.
And I'll agree there. And I was gonna say, like, I'll agree there. And what I was also will kind of piggyback off of that, where I made a criticism in when I was doing my don'ts, you know, Blade and Deadpool or whatever. It's like, yeah, I know Disney won't go rated R. I know they won't do that. But they have successfully gone a bit darker and for more foreboding. And I would say, like, the thing that kind of live action that kind of sticks out in my head is the first Pirates of the Caribbean. When, you know, like, they would step out into the moonlight and it would show like what they really looked like and everything, skeletons, and I was just like, ooh, yeah, they could make this work. They could do it, and, you know, and still not lose their family friendly, you know, facade.
This was the first PG animated movie they did, so this was unusual. It was like, what? I was like, what? But it wasn't I mean, yes, it had funny, fantastic. It had Gurgi, the little weird Gurgi creature. That was, I don't know what it was. It was sort of like a dog, like a dog or something, kind of weird monkey dog, shaggy thing or whatever. But this was that time, like I said, when they did like the movie The Black Hole, and they did something Wicked This Way Comes. Yeah, there's Gurgi right there on the screen. But Something Wicked This Way Comes. It was a scary movie for Disney, and I want to say it might have been PG, but it was live action. You know, you had this kind of crazy carnival come to town, and, you know, there's all this weirdness going on. But I think they could do this right with a lot of love, and you get some young actors to play the roles. Obviously, I mean, I guess, the gender thing wouldn't be necessary because you already got a female lead right there.
Exactly.
And I mean, yeah, you could I guess race flop some of the roles or gender swap some of the other roles, I suppose.
I don't know why you'd want to, but
is a guy with, you know, a skeletal guy with horns, so you really can't gender race swap that, really.
It's just like, who would care?
I don't know how you do that. You know, like, if you pull up pictures of the Horned King, you really can't make it a black dude. He's just a skeletal lich guy with horns. It's like, yeah, you just kind of have to work with that, and, you know, give him a cool voice guy, like, you know, who has that kind of gravelly type, you know, awesome voice. I think. I want to say it was John Hurt who voiced him, and, you know, the British kind of the dark British, you know, voice. Very cool. So that's my first one, and I really like this movie. I enjoyed it. I still enjoy it. It's kind of like the Lion King in that there's missing stuff in the middle. You know, it's like the Lion King is like a good beginning, good end, but then middle pieces, I'm like, there's a lot missing there.
Yeah.
So Black Cauldron was kind of like that. It's like it wraps up and ends too quickly. Or I don't know. Yeah. So it's like a convenient ending kind of a thing. I don't like that they do that way. But so maybe Disney could give it more love this time, do a proper remake. My next one is one of my favorite animated shows that we did the comic book, the cartoon panel on, which is Thundar the Barbarian. So much of this could be done. They actually talked about years ago doing a live action movie of this. It just never got off the ground. And I was so looking forward to it. I kept, like, you know, searching on the web, and now you can't find anything about it. But they had actually, they talked about this, and they actually had some, I want to say they had some, whatchamacallit, some audition shots and maybe even some early kind of production stuff. It just never came to be. Which, again, like, if you know anything about the animated cartoon from the 80s, I mean, it only had two seasons, but I thought they were really good. And again, it was for mostly kids, although it was a little older, because, you know, you had Thundar, who was a barbarian. Obviously, it is a kind of a Star Wars ripoff. You know, you got the blonde guy with the magic sword. You got the dark-haired girl who's in this one a sorceress. But she's smarter than him because she knows the ways of the world more and how things work more, even though we're in a sort of a post-apocalyptic Earth. And of course, you had, the strange mutated creatures like Ukla the Mock, which is sort of a Chewbacca sort of ish ripoff of the whole Star Wars thing. But in general, it's different enough because it's not in, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It's on Earth in the future, not in the past, in space somewhere else. And it's enough that relates to stuff that, because, in the cartoon, you get to see stuff you recognize, like, oh, that's a bus, and I know what that is, and oh, that's a Statue of Liberty, and oh, this is this, and this is that. I know these things. So it's relatable that way. And you could do it as one movie, or you can do it as a series if you want, because then I think the original we talked about, it was supposed to be Thundar versus the 13 Citadels of Power or something like that, where, he had to fight all these different, 13 wizards to free the world and all the people from slavery, and because he was always like, freedom and stuff. So
I think
and you can do it as an animated or a live action, either way. I think nowadays.
I wouldn't. I think live action. I think would be pretty cool. I think with live action actually would be pretty cool. They could do it, and as long as they get the world building right and everything, they do the characters justice, and also they got to do the world building. I mean, that shouldn't be too hard to get the world building
and
right.
This is the world that literally you could have. I mean, in the cartoon, they had everything from crossbows to laser rifles, and they had spaceships or flying crafts to cars converted into chariots or something. I mean, so. And then, of course, you had all these different mutated, creatures and races. And so, I mean, it's super duper easy to, I mean, anything in terms of like, heck, the sorceress is like a mixed race character. So you've got it all right there. There's no, there's nothing there that isn't like out of, she's like an Asian, Indian, kind of a mixed race character. They kind of talk about it a little bit in the cartoon a little bit. But sometimes she saves Thundar's butt, and sometimes Thundar saves her butt. I mean, it's balanced out that way. She's the smarter one in terms of the world, but Thundar kind of has that more, I don't know, that sixth sense, or that kind of
the cunning from
the cunning. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he even though she knows more ways of the learned technical world, he knows his way around more in terms of I sense danger, or there's something different, or he's like attuned to the world more on a sort of more of a ground-based level, like an earth, like grounded, as opposed to Ariel, who knows magic and like it's technology and magics of the world. So she's the high learned one, but he's the more common sense one in that way. And of course, Ukla the Mock is just brawn.
Yeah, I would probably, like, if I were to compare this to any team, I would probably say, it'd probably be Captain America, Iron Man, and Hulk for the most part, because like Captain America, he's the great strategist. He's he doesn't know what Tony Stark knows. Tony Stark knows all the technology, knows he's the science guy, and then you have the brawn, which is literally just Hulk. He just goes around smashing stuff. That's what pretty much what you have here. And I'm like, you can do that. You can have fun with it. It doesn't have to be like super super serious or dark or anything of that nature. Well, you
have to, because the animation wasn't, obviously, because it was kids, even for older kids, they still had plenty of silliness in there. It kind of heavy-handed because it was a Saturday morning cartoon,
right?
But I think in this one you could kind of play it a little lighter or softer, rather, not as heavy-handed or ham-fisted as it probably did back in the day in the early 80s. But you could do it all as a Netflix series or a Prime series or some other, streaming series service where, like, again, you could do just 13 episodes, or you can do,
26 episodes or something.
Double, like, like you're going to destroy the Citadel, but you play it as in, like, I mean, heck, each fighting each wizard could be a 2-hour long, almost movie, but, an episodic thing. And then you would have it in such a way, like, you run across technology, robots, not aliens, but mutants and different people, and you know, you could kind of, you know, because Thundar was kind of the brute guy, like, oh, I'm tough, I don't do this, but then like, you know, have him being, you know, squirreled away by, you know, like, I don't know, like a group of nuns or something, you know, he's like, I hate this, but you know, he obviously knows, because I think Thundar obviously knows when he's outmatched in terms of that. If you watch the show, yeah, he'll run in to, you know, things and get blasted, like, oh God, that was stupid, you know, but it's just a matter of bravado of like, I'm going to jump in and hope that my, like I said, my cunning, my dexterity, my, you know, quick footedness will save me, and sometimes it does. Because as people are like, you know, aren't expecting that, because, you know, they come to the game on the show of like, hey, I'm bad, I'm this guy, I'm tough, I'm bad. People know who I am, my name, you know, instills fear. And then when the guy runs at you and throws something at you, you're like, holy crap. You know, he's like, I'm so-and-so. So, whoa. Yeah, so he's not impressed. So you're like, okay, cool. But then when he runs across someone like Gemini, who's like, you know, like one of the main bad guys in the series, who's like super powerful magician and, you know, wizard. I mean, he knows he's strong and tough, and he doesn't, you know, and he gets blasted when he does go charging in sometimes. So even he knows, like I said, in terms of his kind of strategy and cunningness, he doesn't necessarily charge in front to the front, you know, charge the cannons all the time. So I like that. And of course, in the cartoon, he never actually uses weapon on like a living thing, really, to hurt anything or kill anything, for sure. Right. At least in more cartoons, but in a, you know, in a series, you certainly, you know, would want to approach that, because it would be obviously more for either like, you know, a PG-13 range or something, where, you know, you could, you know, because even the TV show Highlander, you know, when you talk about chopping people's heads off, did handle it very cleverly when they never showed them. You knew what they were doing, but they would always kind of show, you know, they would never show the head flying off the person's body or blood splattering or whatever, but they would show the person's, you know, like body slump over, and you'd see, you know, the body there. And you knew what happened, because you got the whole concept. And so like, okay, so, you know, it was, you know, TV fantasy violence or something. But I just think it worked really well, and and it could be done. I don't know, it could be fleshed out a lot more, I think. And of course, then you can always tie in which I'm secretly saying this to get people involved, because they can tie in a toy line, because again, the toy line would be amazing. Yes, because, you know, you got all these different creatures and races and mutants and giant monsters, and you know, you got you know, like I said, you got chariots that were car chassis turned into chariots or wagons, and you got, you know, laser weapons, and you got flying ships, and you got all these things that, you know, you could make into toys. But again, nowadays, I don't know if they do that so much, because kids don't really play with action figure type toys like they did back, you know, when we were kids.
Yeah,
I mean, I was around when like the first action figures, at least the smaller ones, came out, like Star Wars stuff. And my brother had the big G.I. Joe guys, you know, the really big, you know, the 12-inch, you know, those were cool, but they weren't. It was different.
They do. I think they grow out of them a lot quicker, and I think that's just because of like video games and that now. And
that's such a shame too.
More of the people that are buying the action figures and toys and stuff now are adults. So
yeah, that's me. I'm like, like, it's about time. I've been waiting for so long.
Had to put some new shelves in to cover your collection.
Yeah. I'm trying to. It's like a song earworm. I'm trying to stick it in people's ears. Like, good idea. Oh, there's a lot of possibilities there. Interesting, because, you know, he's both kind of witty, sarcastic, cunning, kind of a dumb brute in some ways, but also savvy in some ways. It's like, there's a complex character right there. You know, and of course you have the smart one who knows the magic. You know, the girl, the you know, the dark skinned girl. Like, oh wow, she's smarter than him. What? Tell me more. You know, like, so stuff like that. But that's two of them. And again, another animated movie that I enjoyed from the mid '80s, Star Chaser: The Legend of Orin. Yeah, there we go. The search for the Force is over.
Not even being subtle here.
No, not at all. I mean, it's still kind of that Star Wars kind of thing, because you still got the princess girl. You got the young kind of kid from the backwoods, well, in this case from underground, underworld kind of thing. You have Dag Dabrini, the smuggler, who's the smarmy, greasy, scruffy looking nerf herder guy, and of course you have the spaceship. The spaceship is kind of not the Millennium Falcon, really like it, obviously, but it has its own personality. So it's sort of a cross between R2D2 and C3PO in that way. It's kind of got the British accent, silliness going on there. But then you got the big bad guy, and you also have some crazy, like in the background on the next to the princess girl you saw there in the clip, these weird mutant thing creatures. Yeah, pretty disgusting, pretty gross. But again, it's sort of a fleshed out, or a world that can be fleshed out pretty easily, and you could tell it either again an animation or episodic or actually live action, and it's a space adventure, where the kid finds this hilt of a magic sword, and the magic sword, there's like a message in it. It tells him that these people weren't meant to be underground in slavery and bondage, that if they dig up, there's a wondrous universe that awaits them. But they don't believe that because they've been told by their god, the guy, the big horn guy in the background is their god in the world down there, that if you dig up is hell, and you'll be going to hell. And so people don't dig up. It makes sense, so. But when this thing happens, then they go, that's interesting, because what else is there other than just keep digging until you die? I mean, because that's the grandfather got killed because he died digging. I think he got beat to death by one of the robot cars or something. But so you got that darkness going on. You got the closeness of the kid, kind of that Luke Skywalker thing, and then trying to get the magical sword thing.
Right.
There's sort of a Force-ish type thing in there too. But again, you could flesh it out. I mean, it's like the princess is already a girl. You could make her, I don't know, different raced girl, because all the characters were. I mean, Dag Dabrini looked like he wasn't necessarily white. He could have been, I don't know, mixed race, because he was very dark skinned, I guess, or dark-ish looking skin. So he could have been, like, I don't know, some sort of mixed race of dark skin type person or whatever. So yeah, you could do that. It's not a problem. I mean, certainly as a universe, you can make the races and the sexes and the genders and whatever you want. Right. No problem. That's not a big deal. With the things I'm mentioning here, there's really nothing that doesn't lend itself to kind of modern sensibilities. In fact, kind of like we talked about Big Trouble in Little China, don't remake it, because it's already got that in there. Yeah. It's already got strong women. It's already got mixed a mixed group of characters. It doesn't have all white folks. So
yeah, and I would agree. I was also thinking, like you said, there's a lot of Star Warsian elements that I'm noticing. Obviously, they're, like I said, they're not being subtle about it. But the overall story, while there are certain elements that they've obviously copied from Star Wars, the overall story and not seem anything like Star Wars. It's like you have these characters and stuff, but it's like trying to escape from an underground, pretty much prison, what you're in, that everyone has been told is a sanctuary. Like that's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. Right. Like I dig that. I would love to see something like that. It's not that it hasn't been done before. It's like we got the Matrix. Obviously, it's just like, oh, everyone thinks this is the real world. No, the real world is actually something very different. But it's not, like I said, not that it hasn't been done before, but you could always do it in certain different ways, different angles to make it fresh. And this kind of, like, can't say it's anything like the Matrix. It just has something similar to it, and I think they could do it really well. Here's my question though. Here's my question. Would you keep some of those Star Warsian type? Do you think they should take some of those out, or just go ahead and just run with it?
Well, with Star Chaser, I mean, I guess you could sort of change it up in that regard, I suppose. Not that it's a big deal, because I mean, in essence, okay, so the first part of the story is, people are underground digging up these crystals for their god, which it turns out to be some sort of, mineral that they use as an explosive kind of thing they can use in weapons and things like that, right? But but later on, the story kind of expands because this is kind of like the smaller cog in a bigger story wheel, a bigger story gear. It's like in a set of gears, because it turns out that their god is actually like a really long-lived android that was overthrown, centuries ago. Yeah, this guy, um, and but he changed in terms of he wasn't just a mechanical man anymore. I guess he kind of evolved over time, but he still wanted to, do sort of like dominate the galaxy and take over. But again, I, there was kind of like in the storyline there were a line of these sort of saviors kind of a thing. So it was kind of like I don't know, almost like a Christianity type thing, like the prophets say another one will come kind of a thing. So you got that kind of going on too. So it's kind of interesting. Okay. And so then you go from the small thing of him trying to save himself and his friends and family in this mine, basically, and being worked to death, to then all of a sudden discover, wait a minute, so this guy is doing this so he can get this compound, these minerals, to take over the galaxy, which he's kind of already sort of done. And there's all these robots are running around anyway. So it's a simple matter of, well, now with this fleet he's built that's been in hiding, he can basically take over because he's already kind of all powerful. So this guy is the David that takes down that Goliath guy kind of a thing. Gotcha, so again, you got sort of a biblical element going on there that way too. But I don't think so. I mean, I think the sword aspect,
you probably have to keep that. Yeah.
Right. But see, the sword doesn't come from a magical sword. It actually comes from the kid. So it's sort of like a force energy, but it's not a lightsaber. It's actually his like power from inside, because he is the reborn version of another savior, I guess. Okay. So it's I mean, on the outside it looks Star Warsian, say it that way. But if you dig a little deeper, it's almost more biblical if you think about it, which is kind of interesting. Okay. But he kind of needs that sword element to get out of some pickles. So gotcha. That's kind of it is sort of a plot device in a way, because I don't know if you could do it any other way, really. I mean, I guess you could use the force in terms of his brain, but that's obviously more force-like than a magical sword would be. Because there's magic swords of Excalibur and all kinds of other kind of folklore and mythos and whatnot. So that's one of my other choices. And and again, it could be done as a episodic thing or an animated thing or live action. It could be done in any of those ways, or kind of a mixture of live action CG kind of stuff. But it's again, it's sort of an underrated gem of a movie that wasn't perfect but is interesting, and it had a kind of an interesting element to it, which you can see it was influenced, kind of like Thundar was influenced by Star Wars, but it wasn't so blatantly Star Wars that George Lucas was calling his Eternal. Yeah. It was still that kind of the trio of intrepid heroes that are going to try to do this thing. And actually, if you kind of, in some ways, this movie, you can parallel it to some of the prequel Star Wars, because like I think at some point the main hero of this movie and the princess you showed me in the other the movie poster, they actually went back to that guy's world, and he's not knowing it's the actual like outside of the world, because the way he came out of his underground place, it wasn't near the complex or something, but so he didn't really understand a lot of things going on. But like if you say in the prequels with Anakin and Padme going back to Geonosia to find out what's going on, that's kind of that same thing. Is like, we're going to go back to this world and find out what's going on, and so you have that kind of parallel of they get captured just like they got captured. It's like, that's interesting. I wonder if they kind of the prequels borrow from anything from this movie way before that. So it's almost like it's like an Ouroboros, where it's like they're borrowing from Star Wars, which then borrows back from them, which because then they borrowed from Star Wars, and so you get this kind of this cyclical Mobius strip thing where you can never end. So, and those are my two scientific words for today. scientific mathy things right there. You're learning and you're entertaining at the same time.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
So now my honorable mention, which I don't know if you have, I didn't tell you until I just thought of it. And someone else mentioned this too. I think Michael from Retroplastic mentioned this. It's kind of something that you could throw into the MCU, actually, through it's Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. I don't know if you ever saw this as a kid.
I saw it as a kid, yeah.
Yeah. I think they could redo this as a live action. And I think Tom Holland should do it because he's at that age now where he would be going off to college. And I think it'd be kind of cool that he, rooms with two other, plucky young upstarts, Bobby Drake and Angelica Jones, to, form the, Amazing Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends trio. I think that would work really well. I really do.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that working
as in a live action movie.
And like I said, I know Iceman is part of the X-Men. Yes, I understand that, but it's like you're not necessarily rebooting X-Men as just opposed to just a character,
right? Yeah, and you're sort of doing, I don't know, not a redo or a reboot, but it's sort of a continuation-ish or kind of a prequel-ish, because before Iceman joined the X-Men, maybe he hung out in New York because it's not far from where the X-Men are, and he did he's going to community college because you got to start somewhere, right? I mean, we all went to community college, right? So start somewhere. Then he goes, oh, maybe I'll go over here to the school for the gifted because they have a interesting program, and or maybe this could be afterwards or something. I don't know. I mean, it just all depends. You can do it right, and I just think it'd be really cool. And it could be, those three versus maybe the Sinister Six. Maybe I don't know, something like that. Or some other group of quasi tough bad guys, but not so tough. That by themselves they'd be overpowered, but they need to get together, kind of like Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends got to get together. It's like, let's say if you had the Scorpion and the Shocker and I don't know, the Blue Beetle or something, somebody who's sort of bad but not so bad, like imagine if you had, say, the Shocker and the Vulture, even though they did the Vulture, but because the Vulture by himself, Spider-Man could and did finally take him.
Yeah,
and he really could have, I think, in a better sense, because I mean, it's just a dude. But anyway,
and I think in this next movie he's going up against Kraven the Hunter, and that can be one of the Sinister Six as well.
But make it in such that way so like you got like minor bad guys who all can kind of like join together as a Legion of Doom kind of a thing. Or the Sinister Six kind of a thing,
right?
To where you have some minor bad guys by themselves, Spider-Man can take out easily,
right?
But together, they're they work off each other really well, and they complement each other.
Yeah, it becomes a bit much for them.
Yeah, and it loans itself really well to saying, well, hey, I need backup too, and kind of do his own Avengers thing. And you can even kind of play it off of the Avengers thing. He's like, so we can be like Avengers, and the other two go like, that's stupid. We're not gonna cost us. He goes, but I was an Avenger. Like, sure you were, yeah.
Thanks for watching until the end, fellow Nerd Posse. If you stuck around this long, it means that we own your soul, and the only way to get it back is to click that subscribe button, leave a like or dislike, and comment down below. If you want to watch the full video, check us out on McBlamEntertainment.com, or for the audio version, just simply look us up on your favorite podcasting app. Follow us on social media, the links are in the description down below, and if you feel ever so kind, you can support us on Patreon or Subscribestar for as little as $1 a month and gain access to our Discord server where we talk about all sorts of nerdy stuff. Thanks again for watching, and depending on what time of day you're watching, have a good morning, have a good day, and have a good night, and we will see you in the next video.